I didn't know, we didn't have the masterclass stuff like we have now. We didn't have all your heroes on the internet telling you what they went through like we have now. Like on YouTube, you can go and watch Werner Herzog videos. You can watch, David Mamet. You can watch David Lynch telling you, I did this, 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 and this. And I didn't know. My mentality, and I think maybe the mentality of my generation, was that you're born a genius, and if so, all of this stuff happens. Or you're this smart, and if so, this stuff happens, and it's all natural talent. Yeah. I didn't know that. No. These guys that you've heard of, they went and they were hopeless for 10 years, and then they developed technique in whatever thing they picked. Yeah. Some picked writing, some picked filmmaking, some became musicians. Hi, I'm Van Neistat. I'm a writer-director, and you're watching Behind the Brand with Bryan Elliott.
Hey everyone, I'm Bryan Elliott. Welcome to another edition of Behind the Brand. Today I'm here with the incredible Van Neistat. Van, welcome to the show, but also thank you for your hospitality, inviting us out to your house.
Yeah, welcome to Topanga. Thank you for coming.
I usually ask my guests, how did you get this job?
Okay, so it started in the year 2000, and that was the year that the iMac DV came out, which was the first affordable computer that allowed you to edit video. It was $12.99, and I was on Apple, and iMacs are still $12.99 in 2021.
This is like the color unit. It looks like a toy, but it was like game changer.
And it had that the Rolling Stones, "She comes in colors everywhere." That was the ad campaign.
Yeah.
And it had a little FireWire port on the side that connected to a camera, and the computer controlled the camera. And it came with iMovie, and you could import into the computer. And obviously we all do it every day today with our phones. But this iMac DV was a revolutionary thing, and it was the next cheapest version for non-linear digital video editing. I think was a $40,000 Avid rig.
Yeah, I mean, there was no Final Cut Pro, there was no Adobe Premiere. It was Avid or nothing, basically.
Or Apple iMovie.
Yeah.
And I took my tax return, I bought that machine, and then on eBay, I think the first, either the first or the second internet transaction I ever did, I bought a $900 Sony TRV-8 digital video camera, which took tons of research to I wanted one with the LCD screen, which was also new technology. It had to be mini DV, which was also new technology.
Yeah, I was going to say, this was not like little VHS. This was the mini DVDs or the mini DV, right?
They're DV, they're tapes.
Oh, they are
tapes. They're tiny little tapes this big, and they were 60 minutes long.
All right, because I had a Sony that was a little mini DVD player.
Yeah. Oh, I remember that one. I remember that one. And so the project was, we had from 1985 until about 1991, we had VHS tapes that my mom had shot with a VHS camcorder. Yeah. But that footage is unwatchable, except for 5 seconds every hour or something. So the idea was I would digitize them all, which you could do with the Sonys. With the Sonys, you could go from VHS, plug in analog, and then convert it to digital.
Yes.
And the hard drive on the machine only held 10 minutes of footage. And so I would, it was a Christmas present for my family. I went through all the tapes. It took months. It took from May till November or something to digitize and edit however many years it was, 5 or 6 years of VHS tapes. And that's how it started. And then after that, I had a camera, I had a computer, and I had New York City. I was living in Cobble Hill, Brooklyn, and riding my bicycle over the Brooklyn Bridge every morning to Manhattan, to Soho. And I'm from the country, so everything in New York was interesting to me, and the most interesting things were tiny things. Mm-hmm. And I just started. I never stopped till an hour before you got here. I haven't stopped making them. But how I got the job was I went to college to be a professional writer, and I was an intern at Scholastic at a classroom magazine called Super Science that came out every month. And one of my friends, his name's Joe Torkson, he lived in New York, and he had been there a long time, and he had all these friends from outside of the business, outside of Scholastic, and he brought this artist over named Tom Sachs because they had a really great cafeteria on the penthouse of Scholastic that overlooked the World Trade Center. Cool. And so I would do the science experiments for this Super Science magazine, and my desk would be covered with all this gadgetry. And Joe Torkson said, "You got to meet my friend Tom Sachs. He makes art that goes in museums that's kind of like homemade weird stuff." And I met him, and then the job came to an end. I was an unpaid intern. No, I was a paid intern at Scholastic, and then I had done 2 years. I was only supposed to work there for 6 months. I had done 2 years, and my editor said, "Look, for legal reasons, you have to either work here, and you're an associate producer. I'm sorry, an associate editor, and you have to be in the books and all this stuff, or you can't work here anymore." So I talked to Joe Torkson, and he said, "Go work at Tom Sachs' studio. He's doing a big project, and he needs hands." And I went for like a 50% pay cut. I went and I cut little squares out of foam core, building this big architectural model. And I brought my camera to school to the warehouse where we were building this huge project called Nutsies. And one day, I was measuring foam core to cut. And I did the measurement on it with a tape measure, and I put the tape measure back. I put the tape measure down. I drew my line. I was about to cut with my razor, and I noticed that on the 25-foot Stanley Power Lock tape measure, where it normally says Power Lock, it said Stanley, and then blacked out and handwritten in tiny letters, it said Kubrick is dead. So it said Stanley, and I said, that is hilarious. Yeah. So I made a little movie about working in that space, which was very creepy. It was the old stables for the NYPD from like the 19th century. Mm. So the floors were all angled like this so that the manure and the piss would float down and they could just shovel it out. Wow. So we were leveling everything. Everything was covered in grease. Your clothes were dirty. He loved it because all of the foam core got really dirty. It made it look old. And we were surrounded by industrial machines. So I shot a video of starting with the tape measure and then just doing dissolves from one little tableau to the next. Yeah. And the soundtrack was the Berlioz opening music for The Shining, that womp, womp, womp. And I took dialogue from a VHS tape from The Shining of the guy hiring Jack Nicholson, and he's saying, and there's one more thing I got to tell you about this hotel. The last guy who had your job chopped his wife and kids up with an axe and stacked them in the East Wing. And that's like the end of the video, and then it's like, Nutsies coming next year or whatever. And so I was on the clock. I wasn't supposed to be doing this job. It was like not even moonlighting. It was like I was on the clock making this video that I wasn't authorized to make. And I showed it to Tom Sachs, and he was just like, okay, you're still a fabricator. You still have to build all this stuff, but just keep making these movies whenever you think of something. And then it took 2 years to build the project. And by the time we were done, we had 30 videos. And he would, over my shoulder, be like, change this, make this is shorter, go really tight, get close up, da, da, da. And he helped me refine my technique, my filmmaking technique.
He was directing.
Yeah, essentially. And then he had a show in New York, and then he had a show at the Guggenheim in Berlin. And all these videos played at the Guggenheim in Berlin, and they played in the New York show. And because I was the most involved fabricator in the project, I was chosen to move to Berlin to work there and live there for 4 months. And that's when And that was probably my first paid gig. And then after that, it was just hustle. And eventually, with my brother Casey, we did this TV show called The Neistat Brothers on HBO. And then it got a little easier to find work after. And I don't mean that facetiously. I mean, it got a little bit easier to get paid to do this work.
So let's go back in the chronology a little bit. Let's go back to young Van. I like to ask people what they wanted to be when they grow up. And I ask for context because I think, a lot of people watch this show. Well, they're all different ages, but the common thread is people are trying to find their passion, what they love to do, what they want to do for the rest of their lives, or at least, for a period of time. So going back to young Van, what were you thinking about, future career when you were younger?
I wanted to build things, like be an engineer, make things.
Were you handy then at a young age?
Yes, that forever. From day one, I was like that. And as a child, I would get in trouble for taking everything apart in the house. And also I would get in trouble for taking apart my bicycles because I was unable to put them back together. And my dad wasn't that, he was okay, but he wasn't that handy.
Yeah.
And
what other things did you take apart in the house?
The telephone, the old Bell telephones that were like indestructible. Yes.
The dial. Yeah. Yeah, because the whole shell would come off, right?
And the little, you could unscrew the receiver, and it was a 2-piece mouthpiece.
That's right, I remember that. You could take it both out. Yeah.
And there was bells in there, and there were actual bells with a little hammer, and you could get in there and mess with it a little bit. And then there was this trick. I don't know if you remember this trick, but you got your standard cable with a box on top of the TV, which had a dial with like 40 channels on it. And channel like 17, 18, 19 was like HBO, Cinemax, blah, blah, blah. Right. And there was this trick for a little while where you could take a 3-inch index card and bend 3/4 of an inch of the end like this so that it was like a little claw. Yeah. And then you could shove it into the seam of the cable box and pull it back a little bit and move the blurry line that would obscure because you hadn't paid for HBO. Right. You could move that little line a little bit over and get free HBO.
I never figured that out.
Oh, no, I didn't figure that out. Yeah. But lots of little hacks like that. Yeah. There was also in Thrasher magazine, or it might have been Skateboarding magazine, they would show these little fingerboards that these guys had made, and they didn't, I don't know that they showed how to make them. But I figured out that you could make them the way they make an actual skateboard, but instead of using 7-ply maple, you could use the cover of a notebook because it's sort of like cardstock. And you do like 3 or 4 layers with glue in between, and when it hardened, it was pretty stiff. Yeah. And then you smash apart a Matchbox car, take the wheels out, make trucks out of more of that fake plywood. Yeah. And glue it on. And then you could go through the magazine and pick out your favorite skateboard, which you could never afford, your favorite skateboard graphics, and razor them out and stick them. And then you'd have like a new Steve Caballero skateboard.
That is so cool.
And then you build little half pipes. That was one thing. One when we were really little, 4th grade, one of the things was to make blowguns out of pens. You take the knob and the thing off of the pen, and then you take a needle or a pin, and you'd put like tape around it or a spitball around it, and then you'd shoot it. And once my friend was over, and I did it, and I inhaled the needle, and I never did it. I got so scared, I started crying. I was like, what am I going to do? I'm going to die.
Did you swallow it?
Yes.
Oh, no.
And that was that. I mean, that was for that gadget. But just anything we kind of wanted, but you couldn't really, we didn't have any jobs or money or anything. You just kind of improvise and make skim boards. I got a moped when I was 13 because a neighbor was moving, and I had my eyes on it, and I said, how much for the moped? And he said, $30. And I was 13, so that's 1988.
Did it have like a pole starter, the whole...
You had to pedal backwards to start it.
Okay.
And then you pedaled forward to like ride it like a bicycle, like no one does it. No one's doing that. $30, and I had been saving up for a like generic Walkman, because Sony Walkmans were $100, but you could get like the whatever one for $30, and I had it all in a margarine jar, like in really small bills and coins. And I took the coins to the bank, so I didn't want to look that amateur. And I got bills, and I brought them like this huge stack, and it was $30. I didn't think it was going to run. And then I got a kid named Chris Caldwell. He lived in that neighborhood. He mowed lawns. He was probably 14. And he was like, I know how to get this started. Just pour alcohol, rubbing alcohol in the gas tank. And it worked.
Wow.
And that's like one of the happiest moments of my life, when that motor kicked on, and it was just like, and I was 13, and I had a bike with a motor on it. Because we lived in a place like this, tons of hills.
Yeah.
You could get to a place on your bicycle, but you really had to want it.
You're bringing back all the shenanigans that I used to do too, and I'm thinking, I wanted a moped too, but you remember Bad News Bears, like the original Bad News Bears?
With Jodie Foster?
Yeah.
Yes.
And who was the kid that was like the too cool for school?
Yes. I remember this kid. Yes.
He rides in on that. What was it? I
think it was a monkey, a Honda Monkey or a Honda Gorilla, a mini bike.
Yeah, it's a mini bike.
Yeah.
He comes in, just like, you can see like running all around I was like, I want that right now. Like, that's what I want.
That's a beautiful machine. My friend Andy Spade had this store called Jack Spade, and he had he had beautiful props in the store, and he had one that had like that bike in the store.
Yeah, so sweet. Good times. So you've always been a tinkerer. You've always been curious, taking things apart. Mm-hmm. You basically invented a tech deck, or that phenomenon that happened. There was a wave of popularity of the mini decks.
Yeah. When you could buy manufactured.
Yeah, this is like maybe 10 years ago. Yes. They were pretty popular.
Yeah.
So ahead of your time.
Yeah. But I copied it, and it wasn't my idea to begin with.
But also, it makes me think of a brand named Volcom, which is a surf skate snow brand. And Volcom's advertising in the 90s, late 90s, that's what they were all about. They would cut out little things, and they would paste it and like photocopy it into their ads. And it was so homegrown, grassroots. I mean, it reminds me a lot of your filmmaking technique now, that it's just so like back to basics or grassroots or homegrown. Like that it's very nostalgic. So I love that style. So you were thinking about a career in what, though? Like, you were good at taking things apart. You're curious, but like, were you thinking I'm going to be an engineer, a doctor, own a flower shop? Like, what were you thinking? So I met a boy named Sam when we were 11. We went to camp together. And Sam was from like the fancy town across the river. And Sam's mother was an intellectual, and his father was a psychiatrist. So this is like Eagleton and Pawnee. This is like, he was from Eagleton. Yeah. He was from Eagleton, Eagleton Heights. And they had beautiful style. His father was the son of a Holocaust survivor. Okay. And his family was a very wealthy family in Germany. And then he said that his CEO he was like the Sam Walton of Germany. And he said one day his CEO came into the office in a Nazi uniform and said, "You got to get out, get your family and get out." Okay. And they moved to whatever. And this is Sam, my friend, was the grandson of this guy. And so they were a very sophisticated family. They were Ivy League people, and they had tons of books. And they had beautiful things, beautiful clothes, and the people were all beautiful, and they lived on the water. And that family taught me about the profound, like, soul-changing power of reading books. Just read books all the time. And I did that because I wanted to be cool for this family. I wanted to be like cool. I wanted to go. I only saw them in the summers because he went to boarding school, and he went to a private school before that. I only saw them in the summers, and I wanted to have books under my belt when I saw, I read this over the years, and then they would give me books. And then his family like took an interest in making sure that I went to college, and like making sure they like helped me with, college essays and so forth. And what was family like for you at that time? I mean, well, there were 4 kids, and we were the wild. The opening of
Caddyshack, the very opening, and Danny's like getting ready for work, and it's just this house of mayhem. That was our house. And like we were popular kids because our house was just crazy. Like my parents would go away on vacation and leave us. Like once they went away on vacation, they left me and my friend, this kid Sam, in charge of the house. They were gone. They were in like Massachusetts, and
how old were you?
Dressed my brother Casey up in Neistat, who's a famous YouTuber now. We dressed him up in a
Never heard of him.
Fur coat, fur hat. Brought him to high school with us. Brought him to my high school because at this point Sam had transferred to my high school.
Okay.
We brought him to my high school and we told everyone that he was Sam's French cousin Henri. So that's what the house was like. Typical just Gen X, on your own, don't burn the house down, and figure it out. And that's what it was like. It was like, self-sufficiency.
And so the reading of books, knowledge is power, sort of caught on.
So reading of books, and then my mind was like, okay, I want to do a job where I make a lot of money. And the jobs that make a lot of money, you have to go to college to go to get those jobs. And then at the time, there were writers that made a lot of money. Like now they don't. Like magazine writers could buy nice houses that now they can't. But
yeah. So what was it about making money? Was it because you wanted job security, you wanted things, or you wanted what Sam had, like that kind of lifestyle? What was it?
What was it about making money? To me, that's like a ridiculous question. Are you crazy?
But not everyone's.
But what was it when you're 11 or 12? What is it about making money?
Well, even like when you're in high school, maybe you were thinking like, okay, I got to get a job, or I want to make a job that brings in the bacon.
I think it was because I wanted to live. There was this town near our town called Mystic, Connecticut. And that's where they built, it's famous for building whaling ships. And they preserved that town it's the same way it is now as it was in the mid 19th century when they were building these whaling ships. And it was so beautiful. And in order to live there, you had to be, in my mind, rich. You had to be doctor or lawyer in a small town, rich to live there. And I wanted to live in a very beautiful place like that. Just I don't know where it's from, just some aesthetic sensitivity that I had.
Yeah, it was a means to an end.
Yeah. And so I thought, if I want a house in Mystic, I have to be a professional.
Yeah.
And I have to make a lot of money.
Yeah. And so where did that take you?
And so I went to I had terrible grades in high school. I had okay SAT scores. And then my junior and senior year, I had okay grades in high school. So I went to West Virginia University for 2 years, and I was very miserable. It rained 29 days in March, my freshman year. And so miserable there. And then I got like a really good GPA there because all I did was study. And so I was on the dean's list, and I went and I was really miserable one day, and I went into the college, and I went to the library, and they had all these college books, and it said like the top 25 or top 50 American universities, and it was like a book about them. So I got into William and Mary, and I matriculated at William and Mary, and I was way outgunned. I was not smart enough, and I didn't work hard enough for those. Those kids were unbelievably smart, but I loved them. And there's still to this day that a lot of those people are my friends, guys and gals. And I met this, I guess, back then they were girls, but I guess she was a woman. She was 20 years old or 21 years old. And I dated this girl, and she was, her father was Norwegian, her mother was American, and she had like grown up in Norway and America. And we were dating for about a year or something. And then the summer came, and she said, let's go to Europe. We can visit my family in Norway and stay there for free. And so I worked doubles. I was a dishwasher in an industrial kitchen. And then I think I had another job too. Anyway, I worked as like a madman. I still have like bad elbows from pulling sheet trays out of boiling hot water. And I saved like $3,000. And like you had to without the internet, it's so hard to convey all of the little technical things you had to do in order to go on a European trip.
Yeah.
And figuring out hotels and like, what's my daily budget, and everything's in a backpack. And I got a Eurail pass, a 30-day unlimited Eurail pass. And like and that was how I learned about foreign travel. And I got a sense of like how other people lived.
Did you have a map all unfolded like on your floor? And
it was called the one that the famous one's called the Rough Guide, and then there's the one I can't remember the name of it, but it was this big and it had like all the European countries, and it would do like for $5 meal, $8 meal, not $10 meal, $15, and that's just how we did it. And you'd go, and then some people would just tear out the countries that they weren't going to.
Yeah, like a Zagat guide, right?
I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah,
but it was. But that's how you would do it. And that book was your lifeline. And the Eurail pass was just like, sure, let's go. And, we did trains all over Europe. And that did something to me. That made me compatible with going to places that are, and I'm the Gen X. I'm a nomad. That's our archetype. And so.
What did your parents say? Did they say, Van, you better get a real job? We're kind of concerned.
Nope.
They just said.
Nope. Anything that was, my dad would be like, money is something you're going to need. And then my mom is very mystical, and you would say woo-woo is what you would say.
Open-minded.
She fit in around here really well.
Progressive.
And so, it wasn't like that then. It wasn't like, the culture wasn't like it was now. It wasn't about, it wasn't. It just, it was, but it wasn't as out in the open about making money and stuff. That was kind of like a vulgar thing to talk about. And so...
But there was a path.
There was a path. I wanted to do something where I made a lot of money. Yeah. And I wanted to do something that I knew, because I knew work was 10 hours a day, a third of your life. Yeah. And then my dad didn't have that life. My dad sacrificed. My dad didn't do what he wanted to do, and he ran the family business. He was like the third generation running this family business, and it was rough on him. And he worked with his old man so that, we could live.
And what did he do?
He sold restaurant supplies. He was a salesman, and his dad owned the company. And then my dad sold that company to a bigger company, and then he was a salesman for that company. And then he eventually turned the building into a coffee shop, and that's what he's been doing. But he didn't quit his job doing the salesman.
Yeah. What did he want to do, you think? What was his dream?
He wanted to be a kindergarten teacher, but he couldn't afford it because he had 4 kids, like you. So...
That's cool.
And then a couple of years went. I had a lot of girlfriends, like long-term girlfriends. Yeah. And so I had another long-term girlfriend, and
I was going to say there was a path back then, and we're talking back in the day. The path was you go to school. Hopefully, you go to the best college that you can get into, or if you're like me, you go to a junior college because you don't have the grades for a university, and you earn. I think about that movie Rudy. That really resonates with me because I got turned down so many times at the junior college level to the big school, and then finally the big school let me in. But there was a path. You go to school, you get your piece of paper, you graduate, and you get a great job, and you stay there for 30 years. That was the path. But you were on a different path. You were on a very nomadic path.
I wasn't like... I remember the kids in college talking about, you go and you want to make money, you go work at Goldman Sachs. You want to do this, and you had to be really good at math and physics, and you had to be good at chemistry to get any of these jobs, to get any of those degrees, to do the business stuff. And it was like I liked English and film. We had 2 film classes or something at William & Mary. I think I took both of them, and I took art history classes, and I read all the Hunter Thompson books, and I was like, whoa, you can live like this and make money. And he had like a nice house and a like big farm in Colorado.
Pause. That explains everything.
Yeah, he's the big influence.
Oh, that explains it. It explains it all.
Yeah,
okay.
He was a wild, crazy dude, but he also wrote really well. Yeah. He was a really good writer. Yeah. And then I got to New York, and I hated fucking writing. I didn't hate writing, but I didn't know. We didn't have the masterclass stuff like we have now. We didn't have all your heroes on the internet telling you what they went through like we have now. Like on YouTube, you can go and watch Werner Herzog videos. You can watch, David Mamet. You can watch David Lynch telling you, I did this, and this. And you don't, I didn't know. My mentality, and I think maybe the mentality of my generation, was that you're born a genius, and if so, all of this stuff happens. Or you're this smart, and if so, this stuff happens, and it's all natural talent. Yeah. I didn't know that. No. These guys that you've heard of, they went and they were hopeless for 10 years. And then they developed technique in whatever thing they picked. Yeah. Some picked writing, some picked filmmaking, some became musicians. The Malcolm Gladwell books hadn't been written yet.
Yeah.
And
I'm actually so glad to say that, and I want to make sure that the audience catches what you just talked about, because it's very subtle if you miss it. But this idea of the overnight success is a complete myth. There is no such thing as an overnight success. Mm-mm. All of the greats, anyone who's worth talking about, who's done anything that matters, has toiled and struggled just like everybody else. The difference is what?
Some start younger. That's the difference. Mozart started at 3 years old. Okay, he was a genius at 12 and whatever. Yeah. He had 10 years in, and he had those 10 years. Yeah. He had those young 10 years when your brain is really, really good. Yeah. And and then I think the real breakthrough was I got that camera, and it was this. I knew when I was in Scholastic and I was going into a cubicle, even though I was in Soho and riding my bicycle over the Brooklyn Bridge every day and riding over the Brooklyn Bridge home every night, going to these crazy parties, I knew that I wasn't going to be sitting in a cubicle writing these articles. I was like, wait, writers? What about the typewriters and the view of the Mediterranean and the suitcase full of paper and all that stuff? No, I'm just going to be sitting at a Generation 3 Macintosh because the iMac hadn't been invented yet either. Right. And so there's that. All the stories have that, I went this way, and I went all I could this way, and it was not the right path. Right. And so then, I got the camera, I built this little rig that went on my handlebars with, sponge material to absorb the camera's weight. And then during rush hour, I rode my bicycle through the Holland Tunnel. It was gridlock traffic, and it was like a 90 or 47-minute delay through the Holland Tunnel, and I got through in 5 minutes. And I was like, well, there's something to this. There's something to these videos, and you can put them on the internet. And it took an hour to download. It was like 3 megabytes. Yeah.
Also, let's demarcate this a little bit. This is before GoPro had the GoPro mount.
Oh yeah.
This is before. So in many ways, let's give credit where it's due. You're a visionary. You're sort of a pioneer. You're someone, we were talking off camera. It's a little bit like they've got qualities of an Elon Musk or a Steve Jobs. We're talking about Van Neistat, that's fine, but you see things that other people don't see, or you are frustrated and angry at things that don't work, and then you find a solution to fix it.
That's true, but I would say that I'm not an Elon Musk or any of those guys. I would say that just the resources were available to a new level of income with these technologies, with the iMac and the camera technologies, because there was this film, I don't know if you've seen it, you probably have, it's magnificent, and it's called The Rendezvous, and I'll just tell you how they made it, and you'll understand what it's about.
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
Okay. The camera is mounted to the bumper of whatever the fastest Mercedes was at the time. This is probably 1967. Okay, so whatever, the S500 or whatever of the day. Yeah. They mounted a 35 millimeter camera low, this high off of the ground to the bumper, and they raced top speed at sunrise, so maybe 6 a.m. from the Hippodrome in Paris to Sacré-Cœur. Just they had one reel. They had 11 minutes to do it, and he's just racing through the streets, cobblestone, and the sound they used was from a Ferrari. Okay, and he winds up Montmartre, and he gets to the steps of the Sacré-Cœur, you see, the car's parked, and you see him walk out, and there's a woman waiting for him, and he walks up and he kisses her, and the film runs out of the fucking camera. If he had gotten a light or stopped or blah blah blah, the thing would have and so that guy did it with a film camera, but he had resources that I couldn't get the Mercedes, I couldn't get the rig that you'd have to build, I couldn't get the camera, I couldn't get the film, I couldn't pay for the processing. So I think it moved. Werner Herzog stole his first camera. He took a film class. They had these cameras. He just took I'll do more with this than this school will do. So I don't know. I think I'm just part of a tradition maybe.
Yeah.
And luckily for us, these things now, they're in your phone, and homeless people, and I'm not exaggerating, have the technology now to make this stuff.
Yeah.
But I was early in doing the video stuff because even though nobody used that iMovie thing on their iMac, nobody went and bought a $900 video camera. No one did that. So my brother, the opening episode of the Neistat Brothers, this is probably his finest thing. He made this video, and the producers at HBO said, okay, you need to set the tone. You just have all these little videos. You need to kind of frame it up for us. And he did this video about Jack and the Beanstalk. And he's like, we bought the fucking beans, man. And that's the turning point for this kind of world. I would say entrepreneurial, but it's other worlds too. It's where you're doing these because you have to be so tolerant of uncertainty. You have to be so tolerant of failure. You have to be so tolerant of being broke and living broke. That's it. That's the whole. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I've thought about this a great deal, but I don't know why some people stay with it. I don't know.
I love it. Talk to me about The Spirited Man. Talk about where you are right now.
Okay, so it's hard to do linear. No, this came from here, and then I had this and this and this and this. But that project, I did the HBO show with my brother. The woman who acquired that HBO show, she left HBO, and then we didn't get a second season. And Casey went off and did his thing, and I wanted to do something. I wanted to do cinema. I wanted to do something writing centric.
This is 2010.
Yeah, this is 2010.
Yeah.
So I moved here. I moved to Los Angeles from New York, and I tried to make a television series. I made a pilot that no one's seen, but I've chopped. I made a pilot that no one's ever seen. But I have chopped little bits of that pilot and put them in these Spirited Man episodes.
Okay.
It was called We Can Fix It. And what the concept of it was to be Mr. Rogers for adults. The concept of it was to be Mr. Rogers for adults. And what happened was I was at the height of drugs, and I was smoking pot from morning till night, and then in the middle of the night, when the weed would wear off, I would wake up and I'd have to smoke pot to go back to sleep. And it was fucking great, and I loved it, and I was in it, and it wasn't like I am now. I wasn't this maniac, but I went kind of crazy. And so I drank a lot. And so I got sober in 2012, and it was traumatic head injury. Sobriety is work, you are this kind of person, and then you get sober and you are this kind of person, and then this kind of person, you have to learn why being this kind of person is not going to get you where you should be going.
Yeah.
And it's more than just, I quit doing drugs. It's learning what your mentality was and why did you leverage drugs instead of leveraging something else.
And what did you learn about yourself? Was it an escape? Were you numbing?
No, it was a tool to get the work done because it is unbelievably hard.
Okay.
I think you look at these, we make these things, and the things that we show on the screen are very beautiful, and the lives we show on the screens are very beautiful, but I don't know, maybe just some of us aren't tough. you know, or I don't know. And it was a tool for me to work really, really fucking hard.
Yeah.
And I leveraged it, and then it didn't work after a while. And so that's what happened to that pilot. It was just too, it was off.
Yeah.
It wasn't precise. It wasn't dialed. And then I got sober, and that was my project for like, okay, so that's 2012. I got sober. And then Sobriety was my project for the next 9 years. And then I'm inching and going slow and slowing down. And I worked, and God bless Tom Sachs, because he took me back and he got me real money to make stuff. Like not real rich man money, but like good fees to do collaborations with Nike or with Hurley. And they would pay for these trips, and we'd go to Japan or Bali, or we'd do these long projects.
Like commercials.
Yeah, but they were more like branded, I would say branded content is what they call it.
Little mini movies, storytelling.
Because Tom did Nike shoes with Nike, and so we would do movies that were about his studio, and then all this the assistants would wear the shoes and the Nike clothes and stuff.
Yeah, like an integration.
But I learned sort of the evolved filmmaking technique of like why there's a reason why that Hollywood system that makes incredibly well, the best made movies in the world, there's a reason why they have a set technique that they go by. And one of the things you do is you get that screenplay, you have that plan dialed in before you start shooting. And then one of the things I've learned is that shooting is by far the easiest part. Shooting is almost effortless, especially with the cameras right now. My son is 2.5 years old. I've handed him cameras. He has shot footage that I could use. But people think when they get these machines and they have this unbelievable power that they've seen Spielberg use and they've seen whoever use, they think, oh, I can do what Spielberg does. And it's like, no. You can do the easiest part. And you can't even do it you can't do it like Sven Nykvist.
Right.
So I spent those years, and this is all unconscious. I don't know that I'm doing this. I'm trying to get by and da-da-da. I spent those years really just getting good at it. Just trying to get good at it. I read Tarkovsky's Sculpting in Time, and he's very strict. He's like, you're not experimenting with anything once the cameras are rolling. You know exactly what you're doing. You're executing your plan. Don't stray. And then I listened to that guy, William Friedkin. I heard a podcast with him, or maybe an interview with him, and he said, he was talking about shooting The French Connection, okay? Those scenes that are under elevated trains where Royal Tenenbaum, what's his name? Gene Hackman is racing one of those 70s death boxes, not wearing a seatbelt, okay? Racing, chasing another car with crashes and stuff. And he's like, oh, no, we shot those guerrilla. We would just pay cops to close off the intersection, and we didn't have permits for that or anything. Wow. And then he also said, oh, I didn't do second takes. He said, it's all one take. He said, the only time I would shoot a second take is if a piece of equipment, of filmmaking equipment, was visible. If a light fell in, he said, if a light fell into the shot. Yeah. And I thought, oh my God, this guy's a master. I think he also made The Exorcist. Wow. And I thought, okay, well, if that can be done, that's what I want to do. Because the thing about shooting is, Herzog says, he has these young kids come up to him and they say, I have 600 hours of footage for this documentary. And he says, oh, no. He said, we're filmmakers, not garbage collectors. Yeah. And then he turns around and says, in that movie, The Abyss, he said, you see that kid talking with the handcuffs, and he's about to get the death penalty. He's like, that's almost real time. He's like, that's like 40 minutes, and it was like 45 minutes of shooting. Yeah. And so
it's all surgical.
I took this sloppy digital thing that I had been doing for a while, and it had become that Neistat Brothers project had become like a manifestation of my craziness and my disorganizedness, and also the fury and the mania. That's how you could get through that stuff, is fury and mania. And I tried to refine it down to something, it's still fury and mania, I'm sorry, but that is something more premeditated. And now I'm writing, and the fury and mania is in the writing. And in the writing, you go very hard and blah, 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 blah. And then you have your shot list, and then you just execute that shot list, and the edit is feeds. And so I did this we can fix it thing. It wasn't right. I didn't show it. I showed it to people, and they all had fundamental notes, and it was like, okay, so this isn't the thing. And then I just went and worked with Sachs. I got a studio I moved back to New York. I was in LA from 2010 to 2013. I moved back to New York City. I got a studio in the Bronx that I shared with this guy named Dustin Grella, and did my friend Andy Spade, who was married to Kate Spade. They built Kate Spade together, and Andy was from advertising, and he's like me, and he would hire me to do and my cohorts, Josh Safdie and Ben Safdie, he hired to do little projects for. I'd do little advertising for him, and then he had people, and I did did 2 projects with Tory Burch. With Tory Burch, the woman for the company Tory Burch.
Yeah.
And just hustled. And I don't know, I met Isabel. Oh no, this is what happened. I got a job doing VidCon, a booth at VidCon for Twitter. And it was this booth that I had to make, and it dropped. I got the job because I could fabricate and direct. Mm-hmm. And
did it hurt that you were a Neistat either? I mean, did that?
No, that didn't hurt.
Okay.
And I could get my brother to be in the booth for Twitter, and he did. He came over. He's a good sport. And it was basically this steel booth that you couldn't see in the camera, and then it had a crank on it, and the crank opened this like sort of top that slid open, and then there were 3 brushes. I have a model of it. I'll show it to you. You can do it for B-roll.
Yeah, awesome.
Okay, and it had 3 brushes and 2 brushes and 3 chambers that you could put leaves in, candy in, cereal in, little toys, super balls, and then they shot it in super slow motion. So we had all these influencers sit there and like do something funny, and then that man over there, BC Slace, would crank this thing, and then this wave of cereal would come, and then a wave of super balls would come, and then a wave of spiders would come. Yeah. And with that money that I got paid for that, I had enough money to pay my New York rent, my studio in New York rent. I'm sorry, my apartment rent, my studio in New York rent, and then buy an F350, mount my TW200 dirt bike on a rack on the back, and drive to Mexico for 4 months and go surfing. And in that 4 months it was the 4 months leading up to my 40th birthday. And I just concentrated on surfing. I surfed every day. I hate surfing. I hate the water. I hate being wet. I surfed every day because I was like, this is my opportunity to get good at this thing. I didn't get good at it. I hate surfing. But it was wonderful living down there. I loved it. It was like a little community, and I knew all the people out in the water. Yeah. And I was writing every day. And then I came up with this Spirited Man thing because I read this book called Shop Class as Soulcraft, and he talks about how he says, you bring your car into the mechanics and they plug it into a machine and they can't explain to you what's wrong with it because it's all computer readouts and stuff. And he says, but the Spirited Man wants to know why his car isn't working. And then he went and did like a couple more paragraphs about the Spirited Man. And I was like, that's me. It was like a relief. Yeah. I'm that guy.
Found my people.
Yeah. And then in 2016, I made an episode, and it's the one about New York where it's snowing, and I'm like, to hell with this town, to hell with this fort, to hell with Fifth Avenue, to hell with Park Avenue. And that was an experiment. I just sat on that, but the idea didn't go away. And then COVID, I was supposed to make a film. I was supposed to make a feature film that I wrote last year, and so all the machinery was Canada, and I had producers and the money and all of this stuff. And COVID, boom, just the window was shut.
Went away.
And I had that one episode, and I said, okay, just you're locked in your house. Just and then I was still doing a writing project for Tom Sachs, and he was paying me per hour we're writing his studio manual. And I was supposed to go to the Olympics in Japan to do Olympics movies with Tom for Nike, but I was able to grind out a few hours a day doing these Spirited Man episodes. Yeah. And I think it became this manifestation of Mr. Rogers for Adults. And that was after Neistat Brothers, that was my ambition. I was like, this man is gone from our lives. My generation, that's what we all have in common, whether you're in prison or whether you're Barack Obama. We all have Mr. Rogers, and he was a good thing, and he was a force for good. And it was a show about working. And I'm sorry, I said that wrong. It was a show about emotions and working, because you were at his work. It just looked like his house, but it was all a set. And I heard Norm Macdonald talk about what his jokes were, and he's like, the jokes are just things that I obsess about. And then I write the joke about it. The subject of the joke is something that I'm obsessed about, like the point spread in football games or something. And then I do the joke, and I don't think about it anymore. It's like the last step of the process of that thing. And I think I was reading a lot of books. I was reading a lot, and there were and you know, in 2016. I replaced the ABS pump in my motorcycle, and it was like you had to tear that thing apart to get the thing bare. It's like the heart, it was buried in there.
And why do they do that anyway? I mean, we were talking off camera. I was trying to change the bulb in my front headlights, and it's like you have to have a little kid's hand to get in there and get the whole thing in there.
And yet, those Formula One cars, which take 5 people to start and are the most sophisticated cars in the world, they come into those pit stops. Red Bull can change all 4 tires in 1.7 seconds, and they can do like crazy stuff in like 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Because of it's all done because of compliance with safety and because of shipping and design and supply. It's all done in the name of, I think, profitability. And God bless them, they got to stay alive. But the race stuff is done to be made. Like race, when you take like my bike now, is like it's more serviceable. So anyway, it's a very laborious job.
Yeah.
Started listening to podcasts. Started listening to, I think, like Joe Rogan, and Mark Maron was the first one I started listening to.
Quality.
And I listened to him all the time, and then I started listening to Joe Rogan, and then I listened to Joe Rogan's guests, and he had all these like intellectuals, he had college professors, he had these people, and then in your feed, because of the algorithm, those people's things would come, and it was like college, but like that. But every class was that best professor in the college that you could only take his course once.
Yeah.
But there's like 100 of those guys.
Yeah.
And to this day, this morning on my run, listening to, I was listening to Theo Vaughn, but he's one of those guys in his own way. But it got me really thinking, and the 2008 financial crisis really, really made me want to know what the hell is going on. What's really happening? What's going on?
Yeah.
What's going on and what's going to happen? Yeah. Because this is crazy. This is craziness.
Were you surprised by the success of your Kickstarter campaign?
You know how people are like, never in my life. Okay, so you have some person who like makes like a 20-season series of like some incredibly imaginative thing, and they're like, never in my wildest dreams did I really? In your you couldn't come up with being rich and famous, but you came up with this 50-hour storyline. Yeah. So I was extremely in extreme gratitude for it, and very, very, very happy.
But you weren't surprised.
But I wasn't. You expected it. I wanted to make like more, right?
Yeah.
But
why didn't you set the bar higher then?
Your goal's like 30 grand, because you don't get the money unless you meet your thing, and I had to set it at a level where I could do what I'm promising in the campaign. Yeah. With just like what's the minimum amount of money, and then the rest of Kickstarter, if you look, they're like the ones that get funded. It's like, I'm doing an 8-episode series about Formula One racing. I'll be with the drivers, and then they're like $2,100. Right? Like, really, you're going to deliver all that? And I was asking for $67,000. Yeah. To do like 6 YouTube videos. Yeah. But luckily, I got double that, because that's what I really needed, because they deduct this, and you got to do taxes, and you got to pay to fulfill all the rewards, which is expensive. Yeah. But I was...
well, there's a whole psychology.
I was relieved because that was it. I was fucked. If I didn't get that money, I was fucked. And it just went through today. And it just, the wire transfer was initiated today. So, whatever. I don't have it in my bank account yet. But like, I was like mortgage, life, all that stuff. It was all hinging on this thing being successful. And it's just 6 movies, at that time, it's just 6 movies on my hard drive. And I haven't had an independent thing. I haven't done anything independently that's paid bills or whatever. It's all been working with Tom Sachs, doing Nike stuff. And this is just mine. But my brother making that video and my brother made this 7-minute or something video about sort of my biography and his relationship with me professionally. And that steered so many people to my work.
Did you ask him to do it?
I didn't. I called him the night before. I was going to launch the Kickstarter video, and I said, "Look, what did I ask him? I said, look, I'm doing this thing. I'm wondering, could you post something on one of your things?
Yeah, just let people know.
Yeah, to let people know." And he was just like, and then he just started asking all these questions. Yeah. And I hadn't talked to him about business, and I've never, not since Neistat Brothers, I haven't talked to him about
any of this stuff.
Yeah, so a decade. Yeah. And meanwhile, he is an expert. He might be the number one expert at YouTube. He might be the most knowledgeable person about like what to do, because there are guys with more followers and all that stuff, but he's the first one.
I mean, he's the OG, right?
He's the OG.
When you think about
he's the OG. Yeah. And so he just started, and it was incredible.
So he said, "You're doing it wrong."
Succinct. How succinct he was.
What were you doing wrong?
What are you trying to do? And fundamentally, what I was doing wrong, I didn't know, for instance, that the gold standard of social media, I can never remember the word, it's something like interaction.
Engagement?
Engagement. The gold standard of social media engagement is the YouTube subscription. I didn't know that. I didn't know that's what I was trying to do.
Yeah.
He's like, what you want is subscribers. You want as many subscribers?
Because subs.
And then he said, thumbnails.
Yeah.
Thumbnail and title. He said those are absolutely vital. More important he's like, the thumbnail and title, more important than the video.
Yeah.
Just tons of little things like that.
Yeah.
Tons of little things. And then he said, fundamentally, everything's got to pop off at once. He's like, what's your plan? I was like, Kickstarter, I make the money, then I release at a regular interval, like 1 a week video, and then attract, I didn't really know, attract money. This is like a month ago.
I'm making this up because I know, yeah.
It's like, I figured get brand deals and sponsor deals like I've been doing for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And then that'll just keep the thing going when the Kickstarter money runs out.
Says no.
And he was like, no. And then he just had finite things. He's like, it's this, it's this, it's this, you do this, don't do this. This is not important. This is vital.
What was one of those don't do this?
But then, it's not that world, that aspect of the thing of like getting an audience, essentially, is what you're doing. Building an audience is not intuitive. It is nothing like making the thing. Making the thing that a lot of people connect with, right? And like a lot of people love and embrace. That is, to me, I can do that with my instincts. I can do that. I know how to do that. Oh, I'm sorry, I keep touching.
You're okay.
So making the thing and connecting with people with the video, the thing, I can do that. Yeah. But I don't have an instinct for the I guess it's marketing. I guess that's what you would call it.
It's the other levers, right? It's like you talked about thumbnails being important and title, and maybe even the strategy of it all, which is instead of launching it in chronology or sequentially, Casey's advice was, no, brother, you got to have it all in place, because when you go, it's all got to hit. There's got to be continuity.
One shot.
You got one shot? Yeah. Yeah.
And he also said 2 videos a week. Now, I had been making 1 video a month. Sometimes it would take more than a month because I only had an hour a day because for COVID, my boy didn't have childcare. And then I was doing freelance projects. So I had about an hour a day to do the Kickstarter, which took me 5 months, and to do the videos, which took almost a year. Okay, so I didn't know what my pace was, and I thought,
okay, wait. How long does one of those Spirited Man videos take you? How long did it take you to make?
Okay, that's a great question. The one where it's called.
It seems like you're using sort of archival footage, which is fine.
Yeah.
But walk me through it.
Okay, so obviously it depends, but the one that's titled Why Comedians Are the Most Important Artists of Our Age.
Yeah.
Where I hand type out all of Kurt Vonnegut's Breakfast of Champions and then mount it. Okay, that part of the video, 8 hours a day, took 3 months. Okay, that's not making the video. And then to make the video, and I put this in the Kickstarter, I was like, that thing took it. I was like, I know I'm asking for a lot of money.
Yeah. This actually happened.
All this stuff is like analog. You know, I'm not just like,
this was assembled by
yes. Yeah. And so that part took 3 months, and then to make the video probably took a few weeks, because remember, I only got an hour a day, which you can't do anything in an hour.
Oh my gosh.
However, I did a movie yesterday, which is called Running, and the YouTube, so you get to write, I have a title within the movie, within the videos, and that's the theme, and then the YouTube title, which is another title, that's the YouTube title, and so I think the YouTube title for this one is going to be called Does Running Suck?
Are you picking the titles?
Yes.
Do you have any help or input on that?
No.
Okay.
But why? Are you offering your services?
No, I was just curious if you have, Casey is...
Everyone I know, I'm like...
is Casey weighing in like, that's a sucky title, use this instead?
He does do that. He says, that's a great... I did, like, my friend was nominated for an Oscar, so I did a video about that, and I went for the most goofy thumbnail, where I'm like... Yeah, with a fake Oscar in my hand, and he was like, "That was a great thumbnail, man. That was perfect." So he does weigh in with that, but like he hasn't been complimentary about the titles, I don't think. Okay. But his like he's like, look at Mr. Beast, look at Mr. Beast. His are so good, and they're so simple, and it's like Mr. Beast with an interesting expression. Yeah. A really cool a compelling prop.
No, there's a formula now. There's a whole formula. Yeah.
So I'm trying to like reverse engineer that, and it's like all my artistic instruction is like, no, just call your own voice and people will catch on to that. So, all right. So that one took that long, but the running one, we started yesterday and it's done. Okay. And that's that's just as long. It's 9 minutes long. Okay. And it's a theme movie. It has because I have the theme movies and then I have the movies that are like fix-it movies. Yeah. And those are short. I can do those in one day. Yeah. One long day. But I've been keeping up with the 2 videos a week. Okay. I've been keeping up with it.
Van, I could talk to you for another 6 hours easily. Let's wrap this up with a little bit of advice. Let's go to camera. Okay. Let's connect right now. Let's engage. Okay. And give some parting advice to current or future creators and creatives, people who want to tell stories. What is your advice about making their art? Okay, this is the advice that Tom Sachs gave to me. Work hard and be brave. Read. That's what Werner Herzog says. Read books. Read books that are printed on paper, that you carry around with you in a backpack, and before you go to bed, and while you're in the bathroom, and while you're on the subway, read. I don't know. I need advice. I don't know. I need advice. When the doctor says this isn't going to hurt, and then he puts the thing in your arm, or somebody says this is going to be easy. No. It's really easy. You just go up, you take a right on Fernwood, you take a left on Saddle Peak Road, then you go down Tuna Canyon. It's one way, but stay on the right. It's extremely difficult. If you're trying to start from scratch, it's extremely difficult, and you can't get your project done in less than 10 years. I'm sorry. Unless you go so insane. And if you're one of those people, you don't need my advice. But I'd say it's 10 years. It's a 10-year project. Whatever you're going to do, it was 10 years ago that I did HBO. It was 11 years ago. And this will be 10 years before it's like at a level where, I don't know. I don't know what, but.
I mean, we were just sitting back, chopping it up, reminiscing about the good old days and all that. Tracking my roots, where I came from and where I'm going. But like I say, man, always said it. It's not about the destination. It's all about the journey. Ain't nothing changed but the weather. The dangling carrot that hang from the rear view. Your dreams in the past ain't nowhere near you. Backseat drivers got nothing but 2 cents. Shotgun riders too biased, they all liars. I should get an A for effort, I'm too tired, but I'm never giving up, that's why I'm kinda admired. Role model, like it or not, I gotta play it. Sugarcoat the rhyme sometimes, but still say it. Said I was quitting at 40 is just a fib. I'm still a kid that's wiping the food off of my bib. You ever wanted something so bad that you could taste it? Cried over every opportunity wasted. Good and bad news, which one you want first? Either way you pick, the bad still gon' hurt you the worst. I never got to bask in the fruits of the labor, and I never got the cash from that dude from the label. I'm just thinking back.